Hi everyone, today let's talk about advanced auto parts earnings, then we'll get into the economic data, then we'll look at my abysmal results. I was in good position, but I definitely overtraded today, and then we'll talk about my thoughts for tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So advanced auto parts plummeted today on their earnings, down 30%. They cut their outlook and their dividend, which is interesting. This seems like a situation where they are predicting a bit of a recession for them specifically, and it'll be interesting to see if this starts to play out in other industries. They reported 72 cents profit when the expectation was $2.57. Revenue was actually pretty much in line. Which is interesting. So they're getting much less efficient in terms of making money on the top line. And they also cut their dividend to 25 cents compared to $1.50 per share. So a huge cut to their dividend, a huge cut to their earnings. And you can see earnings expectations are now between $6 and $6.50, which is a huge cut from the $10.20 to $11.20 previously expected. And like I said, this is not necessarily interesting just for AutoZone, but the fact that they're seeing pretty dramatic demand destruction, the question is, will this start to propagate across the rest of the economy? And this is just early signs, or is this isolated to just the auto parts or automotive industry? Moving over to the JOLTS report here, you can see it came in much higher than expectations. So the job market is still very strong. Moving to tomorrow here, you can see non-farms coming out at 8:15, jobless claims at 8:30, ISM manufacturing PMI at 10 o'clock, and crude inventories here at 11. Fed balance sheet here at 16:30. So a fairly interesting day. Moving over to Fed futures, you can see we're actually back in the majority case for a pause. We basically flip-flopped on percentages. Yesterday, it was 63% for a hike. Now it's down to 32%, so we're going back and forth on this. We're just about 2 weeks out from another potential hike, and now it looks like we're going to get a pause once again. Moving over to the charts here, you can see we got a little bit of a down day. We got below that level, tested above it here, chopped right around that level, which is not great for me generally. When we chop around the level, I tend to get whipsawed a little bit, and that did happen here today. But we're back below it after hours, and it looks like we're probably going to pull back into this zone for 1671. You can see that here on the daily chart, gap down, hold at this range right on this longer term trend line. If we get another move lower and we take out these trends tomorrow, that could set up for a huge move down to 410.54. We have the 21 EMA sitting at 413.80 with VWAP right on top of it. So definitely an interesting level. If we break through these levels in the after hours and the pre-market tomorrow, then I would expect a very bearish day. But right now we're at key support, and it certainly looks like it could hold going into tomorrow's session. Moving over here to the NASDAQ on the 15 and the 4 hour, you can see what it's talking about here on the 15-minute chart. Broke below my level, tested the 200 SMA, rallied pretty aggressively, got squeezed to the downside, got a nice little whipsaw in here. Not easy trading for me. Generally, I would like to see this come in, hold support, allow me to get a nice entry, and then we see a rally back up to the next level. But in this case, we're chopping right on this level. It's not good trading. Looking at the 4 hour, you can see we're below it. Bearish momentum here on the 4 hour chart. You can see that huge volume spike at the end of the day on that bearish candle. Looks a little bit weak, but the 200 SMA on the 15-minute chart is holding up. And if this breaks down here, then I would expect it to move to 344.75, and then below that, 341.96. Remember, this is still an uptrend, but it does seem like we're getting at least a short-term pullback on the NASDAQ. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow here, you can see the Russell broke my level, came in very close to my next one, and then held. This was pretty good for me. Took off my position as we broke, got a new position as we got close to support, and then rolled up into this rally, and then we held in that zone. Nice little trade. Looking at the Dow, similar thesis, down move, back above support. And now we're watching this right at that key level going into tomorrow. Neutral on momentum as well as RSI, and just watching that 329.40 level. Moving over to Apple and Tesla, you can see another wick here on Apple. Definitely not what you would want to see. Potentially looking for that pullback. Can't get above 179.61. Can't get below 176.13. At this point, these wicks look like rejection. But it is worth noting that momentum is starting to turn back to bullish. Strong bearish candle on volume, which is interesting. maybe we start to see this pull back a little bit more. It's up a little bit after hours. So conflicting on the indicators here on Apple. Looks like rejection wicks at resistance, but momentum is starting to tick more bullish. Tesla also at a key resistance here. Momentum starting to tick down. RSI also ticking down. It seems like these are both running out of room to the upside before we get at least some kind of pullback. Over to staples and discretionary here. You can staples still holding very strong at this 72.50 level. Starting to throw some wicks, starting to build on momentum, volume starting to pick up here as well. Kind of interesting. Discretionary, strong bearish day, gap down, fell down to the 55 EMA off of that resistance. Now we're holding at the 55 EMA and rallying back up to VWAP. Looks a little bit bullish going into the end of day. Momentum didn't really tick up today, which was interesting. Despite that pretty much engulfing candle on the second 4-hour candle of the day. Overall, still an uptrend, but looks a little bit weaker. Moving over to oil and gas and utilities. Oil and gas was once again the worst performer here today. Gap down, held in this zone. It is still at support, which is interesting, but momentum is weak here. It continues to go lower. RSI looking weak here. Volume is starting to pick up as this starts to go lower. If it breaks 116.64, that's going to be pretty bearish. My next level of support would be around 110, maybe 109 at these previous lows from July of 22. Utilities, on the other hand, finding some support. Strong bullish candle on up almost 1%. Hit my next resistance at 65.13 coming off of 64.20. If we start to see some of this trend reversal like here where we get into the zone, chop, and then we get above all the EMAs and SMAs, start to rally back up to the 200, that could be pretty bullish here. Momentum turning towards bullish a little bit. RSI moving out of oversold conditions. So definitely some buying happening here on utilities as one of the best performing sectors today. Moving over to semiconductors here on the hour and the 12-hour, you can see this down move here today. Looks very weak. We're below the 921 as well as the 55 now here on the hourly chart, as well as VWAP. Looks very bearish, coming down to 141.29. Looking at the 12-hour here, we have 142.38 is the 9 EMA, basically just above that horizontal support. Momentum turning over, RSI moving out of overbought conditions. Definitely looks like a pullback now on semiconductors. Moving over to transports, you can see we got a huge gap down and fall down to support once again. We talked about this being a lower high setup versus this previous consolidation. Previous consolidation turned into a huge move down. And so did this one. So we gapped down, fell throughout the session, testing support, tested that longer term downtrend line. Now we're just above it here. Still looks very weak in my opinion. Momentum turning bearish. RSI on the daily chart also turning more bearish. We could up and retest this longer term resistance up here. So overall, transports looks pretty bearish going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to stocks above their 50 and 200-day averages here, you can see the 50 came down, tested that level, and it held. We got a little bit of rejection here, but we're moving back down, which is interesting. So this is no longer looking like gap reversal or an island reversal back into the zone. It looks like just a gap down, slight reprieve, and then a continuation lower here. And if this starts to sell off more tomorrow, that's going to be a continuation on this chart as well. And we could be looking back into this previous area. And the last time that we moved into this zone, it was pretty aggressive. Similarly here on the 200-day chart, we got another gap down, continuation to this next support. RSI showing weakness, momentum definitely showing weakness, and both of these charts look pretty bearish going into tomorrow's session. Moving over to the dollar here on the hour and the 12-hour, you can see we hit that resistance and then broke down. Once again, we got above this and it looked like we were potentially going to hold here. We ended up getting a deep retest and then a continuation with a higher high, but now we're getting a pullback and a lower low. So we're definitely consolidating at this point. We talked about this potentially being a consolidation, but now with this test to the upside and this bigger pullback, it makes me a little bit more bearish. We're not getting this same continuous up move that we were getting on the 12-hour, and it looks very bearish here on momentum as well. You can see RSI moved below the SMA, came back up, retested that, and we're rejecting from there. Overall, the dollar looks more bearish now than it has in quite a while. Moving over to JNK and TLT, you can see JNK jumping back down below resistance and then getting a doji. This has been a choppy chart here. jumping above and below my horizontal support and resistance at $91. Momentum is still ticking towards bullish after this fairly consistent down move. And you can still kind of argue that this is an island reversal where we gap down, consolidated, gap up, but it looks a little bit less clean now that we gap back down, filled the gap, and you would want to see this jump tomorrow. If it does not, and it starts to pull back further, then we should be looking back down to these previous lows around this 89 or 89.60 level. TLT, on the other hand, has had 3 very bullish days in a row, hitting the 21 EMA as well as VWAP. Looks very nice going into tomorrow's session. Bullish momentum, bullish RSI, looking to cross that 50 line. We get a pullback up to the 21 EMA at 104.13. Horizontal support is now at 102.50. We're above that level, as well as this longer term downtrend line. So 103.70 or the 200 SMA at 104.13. Moving over to the bond and S&P's volatility, you can see bond volatility pulling back here as bonds start to rally a little bit. VIX, on the other hand, gapped up, held below resistance. Not much to say here. It is ticking up slightly, which is interesting, but not really enough to go off of quite yet. Like a higher low setup. This is this previous low. Gap down, consolidate, gap up, hold. Maybe we get a continuation. Certainly seems possible on the VIX, but not really moving with any clear conviction quite yet. Moving over to my accounts here, you can see I was profitable on the IWM. Talked about that chart being fairly easy on the day. We got the breakdown, found support, and then rallied. Nice clean move. Qs, on the other hand, were definitely very choppy, especially around my level. I got squeezed on both sides and it didn't work out very well for me. Now we're falling a little bit after hours, which is not great considering the positions that I have on. I do have 2 covered calls here at 348 and 352 for a decent amount of credit protecting these 200 shares that I have here. We'll see how this plays out tomorrow, but overall I'm slightly bullish going into tomorrow's session, which is not necessarily what I wanted. We'll see how that plays out. If it starts to waterfall off, I'll definitely flip to bearish. We're below my resistance, and I honestly should have been more bearish going into the end of the session than I was, but there was a squeeze right at the end, and like I said, I got chopped around at my support and resistance level. Overall, I think we're probably going to go a little bit lower, and I'm probably going to get squeezed on these shares to the downside at least a little bit. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of AutoZone earnings, and if that's isolated to auto parts or if that's going to expand into the rest of the economy. Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.